What's up, Jared and Jason? I just want to call because I threatened to do this before about Action Film Face-Off. And at the end of the show, Jared likes to play that message about, Jared, you are not a weirdo. Well, I'm going to have to break the truth to you. Jared, you are a weirdo. But what you need to do is embrace it. Being weird makes this world a better place. And you guys know, being weird makes for some great action movies. So, Jared, embrace your weirdness. Enjoy being weirdo. You guys take care. Bye.
The Longbox Crusade presents
Action Film Face-Off.
This episode is 1969 versus 1950.
Two old school films enter.
One old school film leaves.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, then go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hit.
Welcome back to Action Film Face-Off, the show where 2 random years are selected. My brother brought an action film from one random year. I brought one from another random year. Those 2 films are going to do battle using a variety of criteria, and a champion's going to be crowned by the end of the episode. I am Jared Albrecht, the Death Probe. My co-host is my brother Jason, the Weasel Skull. We are both combat veterans who take our action seriously, but not too seriously. So we're going to have some fun on this episode. It is Retro Rewind. We recalibrated the randomizer last episode when we chose these films. It's usually from 1970 to present day. We recalibrated it from 1950 to 1969. And when it comes to that, Jason, I had not seen either one of these. These are both blinds for me.
Same with me. Double blind.
Double blind back in the 50s and 60s.
Yes, indeed. We're going to score each of today's films on a scale of 1 to 10 in 5 categories. Those categories are story, overall spectacle, best action scene, the hero, and the villain. And it's still not in that order. And if you haven't figured out the actual order by now, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe get some ginkgo biloba, something to help your memory. But I'm sure no matter how bad your memory is, we all know that there's going to be a deduction round at the end where up to 10 points can be subtracted from the film's total for whatever we determine is the low point of the movie.
Thank you, Jason. And today we are joined, as usual, by a sniper. The sniper has 1 point to give in each category. So the sniper can sway the scoring by a total of 5 points. Let's meet our sniper for this episode. He is no stranger to the network if you've been checking out his before they were Beatles and the after they were Beatles and just to the left of when they were Beatles. He does a lot of Beatles work on the network, and he also he's an author. He's a dapper dresser. It is Alan J. Porter. Welcome to Action Film Face-Off, Alan.
It's about time you guys had me on this show. Come on. What's it been, 5 years now we've been doing podcasting, and this is the first time you've had me on this show?
It's funny because Alan and I do James Bond versus spy movies, which is a very similar format. We were just talking on our last recording, and I was like, wait a minute, how have you never been on Action Film Face-Off? He's like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know either.
It's great to be on. I really enjoy the show when I do listen to it, so
awesome.
I'm looking forward to contributing.
We're glad to have you here. You're classing the place up already. And so our listeners can get to know you. What are your 3 favorite action films? And we are judging you.
Fair enough. You judge me all the time anyway, so. You jokingly said, it'll be Goldfinger on Her Majesty's Secret Service and some other Bond movie. So
and that's all judged properly with thumbs up, by the way.
Fair answers, yes.
Yeah. To do this and not pick a James Bond movie and not pick a superhero movie. So my wife, Jill, and I, when we sit down to watch an action movie, what do we pull from the DVD collection? Showing my age there, the DVD collection, to watch the most frequently. And they are The Bourne Identity,
okay,
which is Jill's favorite. And as it's Christmas, I have to put Die Hard in there.
Valid, 100% valid.
And I'm going to pick my favorite one from the Mission Impossible franchise, which is Rogue Nation.
That is also my favorite of the Mission Impossible series. Those are fine picks, Alan. Well, before our two films enter the Videodome arena, we are thrilled to kick off this episode with special shout-outs to the Crusaders Club members. These are the fine folks who joined our crusade over at patreon.com, and they're enjoying early access to special long box episodes. I just posted a review of BioShock, the video game from 2007, over there this past week, so you can go check that out if you're a Crusaders Club member. These are the folks reaping those benefits and a bunch of other ones and giving so much appreciated support to the show.
Alan W. Wright,
Angelica Wolf,
Yo, Auburn Elvis,
Bill Beer,
Billy D,
Bradley Dello,
Braxton Underwood,
Carrie,
Clinton Robeson,
Captain Entropy,
Clark Westfield,
Dave Collins, Battle Wagon,
Eric Hodges,
Eric Porter, no relation,
Ezra Gallo,
Gary V,
Gene Hendricks,
George Meal,
Gerald Green,
Heinz K,
Jason Keene,
Jason Lady,
Jeff Polia,
Jeremy L.,
Jim Jarman, Jim Jarman, Jim Jarman, Jim Jarman. I hope you like Jim Jarman too.
Jim Mail,
Joe Man Conan,
Joe Thomas,
John Watson,
Josh Strickland,
Candace Ward,
the wonderful Kathy Bright,
Matt and Lizzie Passo,
Mark Ross,
Maxwell Traver,
Michael Minton,
Miranda W,
PD Devons,
Paul Hicks,
Rick from Jeff and Rick Present,
Ronald Easterday,
Rob Morgan,
Samantha Maney,
Sean Abansky,
Spidey 67,
Spreadsheet,
Steve Cronin,
Tim Price.
Tony Pennington,
and Toronto Cup.
If we miss anyone on our list, we apologize. Keep in mind we record these episodes well in advance of release, although not in this case. I'm going to be editing this thing down to the wire. But if you're a recent addition, we should be adding you soon. But still, no worries. Let us know we missed you by sending an email to contact@longboxcrusade.com, and we will square it away. If you're asking yourself, how do I get in on the Crusaders Club? Patreon.com/longboxcrusade. For as little as $1 a month, you get access to the amazing world of the Crusaders Club. We encourage you to come and check it out.
All right, now that we're done making hay, let's go play with some clay. Let's get back to the combat and learn a bit about the film gladiators about to battle for your pleasure.
This episode, I was assigned the year of 1969, and I have selected the Valley of Gwangi. What year did the randomizer select for you, Jason?
Well, I got 1950 and put into our Videodome arena, King Solomon's Mines.
Well, that is a fine matchup, folks. It's important to point out that this isn't Jared versus Jason. We each had to select from our assigned year. I might very well like his selection better than mine, or vice versa. This is more about the discussion about beloved action films and coming to a consensus on which one is this episode's champion, with a quick around the room on where we saw it. Both of these I had on my Plex, so that was an easy peasy one for me. Jason, how did you track these down?
I've forked over some cash to rent them both off of Apple Plus. So I got it from the Apple library.
What do they go for over there, if you don't mind me? So the listeners know what they're into if they go there.
About $4, $3.99, I believe, was the asking price.
All right, fairly standard. Alan, how did you watch these films?
I was with Jason on Valley of Gwangi. I watched that on Apple Plus, and I think you're right, it's $3.99. And I also shelled out $3.99 to Amazon for King Solomon's Mines.
There you go, folks. It's out there. They are out there, and they are available. And now is the time for your spoiler warning. We are going to play a little musical interlude here, and on the other side of it, we are going to get all the spoilers. These are some pretty, not recent movies. But anyway, if you haven't seen them before, I would recommend you pause here, and we will meet you on the other side of this musical break. All right, guys, let's jump in with some quick information on 1969's The Valley of Gwangi.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you are about to see has never been seen before by human eyes.
Professor, there's a big lizard back there, and he's heading his way. Now get aboard!
Get Spears! Get Spears!
There's no way through! There's no way through!
Here's your cast and crew. It starred James Franciscus and Gila Golan. It's directed by Jim O'Connelly. Synopsis goes a little something like this. Hey, did you ever see King Kong? Now, imagine that King Kong is a dinosaur and that a group of traveling show cowboys found that dinosaur in a lost valley in Mexico. You know, add in a heaping help of Harryhausen, and there you go. All right, here's your interesting trivia. When this film was first conceived, it was supposed to have been a follow-up to King Kong. Hey, I knew it was in the DNA, but that film was never made. It's kind of the idea kind of sat on a shelf, but an early black and white version of the Cowboys in Africa style footage was shot, and it wound up being used in Mighty Joe Young. Item number 2. This film was in production for a year and a half, which back then was a long time. The dinosaur rope sequence alone took more than 2.5 months to complete, but shortly before production ended, the studio management changed, and the new bosses didn't have a lot of confidence in this one, which is why it was released with very little publicity, and it failed at the box office. Wah, wah. Leading lady Gila Golan was redubbed in this film. Not uncommon in this era, especially as us Bond fans know. But here's the weird part. The voice actress who did the dubbing for her remains a mystery to this day.
You and me.
Mary Jane, our very own Mary Jane, was the voice actress. All right, let's give it over to Jason.
And now I will give you the rundown on 1950s King Solomon's Mines.
Into the strange and wild interior of darkest Africa, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer sent a motion picture company on safari. Here in its original setting, where no white woman had ever been before, was filmed the story of primitive savagery, of incredible danger. You'll thrill to the magnificent love story of the flaming redhead and the handsome jungle adventurer, as together they fight their hazardous way through a vast land of mystery and excitement in their relentless quest for the fabulous fortune that rests in King Solomon's mines.
No white man has been near the Calawanas for 5 years. Nowadays, they're feared as much by the natives as they are by the whites. We're going to have trouble getting our own boys to get that far.
How long will it take us to get there?
Weeks, months perhaps, I don't know. I've never taken a woman on safari with me before.
Have I been a handicap?
The fun hasn't started yet.
When it does, I'm sure we'll all enjoy it.
What do you think you are doing? You had no intention of letting us leave this place alive. You're going to get us out of here before those fellows outside start warming up and carrying out your orders.
King Solomon's mine.
It starred Deborah Kerr, Stuart Granger, and Richard Carlson. And it actually had two directors. Compton Bennett started directing, and Andrew Martin finished it off. Synopsis goes a little something like this. Alan Quatermain is an adventurer who has grown tired of life. Living in Africa, Alan makes his living as a hunting guide for rich tourists. After a tragic death during his most recent expedition, Alan is contemplating his next move when he is approached by the beautiful Elizabeth Curtis and her brother, John Good. It seems Elizabeth's husband is lost in the dark heart of unexplored Africa after going in search of the hidden gems of King Solomon's mines. Alan gears himself up for one last adventure to help Mrs. Curtis find her wayward husband. Along the way, they face murderers, betrayal, and the dark continent itself. They also find the further they get from civilization, the closer they become. Yeah. And so there's a lot of good trivia nuggets with this one, but I picked these three. So the movie's cave scene was filmed at Carlsbad Caverns, New Mexico. And during the filming, Deborah Kerr wrote her initials DK in lipstick on the wall. The limestone formed over the lipstick and has preserved it, and you can still see it to this day. The film actually used local African villagers, and it was the first time the Watusi tribe allowed themselves to be captured on camera.
That's cool.
And finally, and this is why there were two directors, Stuart Granger grew so frustrated with director Compton Bennett, he had him fired, and the studio replaced him with Andrew Martin, who got along much better with the star. And now that we have the basics on today's contestants.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Test your might.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Fight.
It's a street fight,
All right, it's time to mix it up. But before we do that, let's talk about Match Game. That's the game within the game. We have two films, 5 categories. I have not seen Jason's scores. He has not seen mine. How many out of 10 matches do you think we're going to have on this episode? Put your guesses in out there in listener land. And Alan, you're right here. How many times do you think Jason and I are going to match today? See if you can be a big winner.
I think I know you two guys pretty well. 6 out of the 10. Yeah,
That's what I was thinking. I was feeling 6 on this.
Yeah, it's usually 6, 7 a safe bet. 6, 7, 8 is a real safe window for us. So we'll see. All right, and speaking of scores, let's look at the score barometer. We are going to rate these on a scale of 1 to 10. 5 is average. I mean, it's okay. You saw it on a Sunday afternoon, made-for-TV movie, and it was good, and you liked it. And 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you got a really good movie. 4, 3, 2, 1, you have things to work on. With all that being said, let's get into round 1.
Don't force me to fight, because you won't like my way of fighting.
Round one is the story. How engaging or original is your story? We will start with Alan's thoughts on Gwangi from 1969.
Well, you already stole it's a remake of King Kong. Sorry, it's a remake of King Kong.
All of a sudden, I want to see Hong Kong King Kong.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
That'd be a great movie. Yeah, that it's a remake. But I mean, it is basically a remake of King Kong with dinosaurs instead of a giant monkey, Forbidden Valley instead of Skull Island, Mexican City instead of New York, blah, blah, blah. It's the plot line. But it is the classic versus cowboys movie. I think it's actually the first cowboys versus dinosaurs movie. I think it was the first time it was done. And I remember growing up certainly a British comic strip that was cowboys versus dinosaurs that I used to read, which I can't remember the exact title of. That sort of visual is something that I sort of grew up with. So it was good to see it on the thing. But I don't know, it felt a little flat. Probably knowing that it's inspired by King Kong, it doesn't have the heart and pathos of King Kong. It feels like it's just going through the motions, I think, story-wise. So, yeah, it was okay. As a story, it was like, yeah, I know the story. I need something from the characters because I know the story well. I don't think they really delivered on that. It didn't really engage me in terms of the characters.
I think that's fair. We'll go to Jason.
I think I liked it a little more than Alan. I understand what he's saying, though, because it seemed like you wanted to have this layered. It was kind of like a love story. There was a lot of back history with the characters that they tiptoe up to it, and then things just get resolved kind of haphazardly. You kind of get the feeling like the studio's like, all right, get to the clay dinosaurs, we want to see that happen. They kind of had a love triangle story at first between the two protagonists, and then it kind of fizzles out. But to me, I think it really reminded me of Jurassic Park, kind of the first time I saw Jurassic Park. Kind of the same thing, you've got these characters that in Jurassic Park, they were a little better defined, but it's really like, let's get to the dinosaurs. This is what people are paying their money to see. In this movie, they spared some expense, I think, if you compare those two films.
They didn't have the computer technology in 1969.
I know, but God bless them for trying. And I mean, I kind of have that evoked for me that same feeling of wonder. I kind of chuckle when I see the claymation effects. But, it drags you in after a while, and it's easy to poke fun at it. But then I'm crying when the little clay elephant gets eaten by the dinosaur. I'm like, this is stupid. Why am I upset? These are obviously clay figures. But yeah, I think that they really did try to have a good story. It was kind of like a horror movie with the lady with the eye patch saying you're going to be cursed. And, it never quite connected the dots, but I really appreciated it for trying.
Well, no surprise. I have pretty much the same thoughts as you do, Jason. I understand exactly what Alan's saying. Like I said in my summary, with a heaping helping of Harryhausen, it got me through with no problems. I got what I came for: cowboys and dinosaurs, especially in that final reel. But we'll get to that part later. All right, let's shift gears. Let's go back in time, even from Gwangi back to 1950. King Solomon's Mines. We're talking about the story of it. And man, this was going to be near and dear to Alan, because Alan has written, hold up the amount of fingers, Alan. I want to say at least 2. Yep, I got it. He has written 2.
I got one of them. I've got one of them on my shelf.
2 published Alan Quartermain stories. He loves this character, so I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this character's most famous tale in this version.
As you said, I love Alan Quartermain, and this is the movie that introduced me to Alan Quartermain. Actually, told this story on other podcasts, but basically my grandmother and I, Sunday afternoons when I was younger, I'd go over to my grandmother's apartment, and if it was a rainy Sunday, she put on the TV and we'd watch whatever movie was on. And in the UK, I don't know why, but Sunday afternoon ones were always sort of classic action movies. And she's the one who introduced me to characters like Tarzan and Alan Quartermain with this movie. I remember specifically watching this movie with her way back in it wasn't 1950s. It was a bit later than that. But so this movie has an emotional resonance for me as well. And it's been a long time since I watched it. So Jill and I sat down to watch it. And yeah, I enjoyed it. But you know what? I didn't remember that it was so much of just people walking across the screen, pointing at animals.
Hey, this is Lord of the Rings all over again.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the original Quest stories. I mean, you know, the Quatermain, King Solomon's Mine, and She, which is probably the better story, Quatermain story, are traditional Quest stories. And a lot of that framework comes into things like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and all sorts of stuff. But as a movie, yeah, there was a lot of people walking around pointing at things. Not a lot actually happened until the last 20 minutes, I think, of the 103 minutes of the movie. Most of the plot was in that last 20 minutes. They were cool. You mentioned about the Watusi tribe, but not just them, but the other tribes. And you met all these other people. They had actual native actors actually acting in the movie rather than flying in, you know, a Hollywood guy and making him up. So that was cool. I liked the tribal rebellion, the discovery of the mine. Since that was the title of the movie, it was a bit like, oh, there's the mines, we found them. Okay, let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah, right?
It's like, gave them all this build-up. It's the title of the movie, and we spent like, I don't know, 3 minutes in there. The river escape, I thought, was pretty cool. Yeah, overall, it did mess with the actual story a bit, adding a female lead that's not in the original story, and there is no female lead in the original story. And I thought Deborah Kerr was actually pretty badly miscast. I don't think she really played the part, and I didn't get any real chemistry between her and Stuart Granger. They also downplayed the importance of Umbara, the king in disguise. He is a much more important figure in the original story, and in the earlier version, which I think Paul Robeson played him in the earlier version. But I thought it gave a good idea of what a safari in the late 1800s would actually look like. So I think the book's set in like 1897 or something like that. There's been multiple adaptations throughout the years, like I say, from the 20s to the 50s to, I think there's an 80s one and there's a more recent one. This is, I think, is a pretty good one, particularly that last 20 minutes. I think it could have just maybe paced the story a bit better. But if you're going to sit down and watch, if you like, a classic version of King Solomon's Mines, I'd say this is the one to start with.
I would agree with a lot of that. I did feel like, and I remember texting Jason the first time I watched it, and I was amazed by it, and we'll get to it in Spectacle, but I think they really did lean heavily on the look at this vibrant color and look at Africa, because this was 50. I put myself in the headspace of a moviegoer at that time in America. It had to have been like, oh, wow. Like the characters in the movie, look at this and look at that. Look over here.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get to Spectacle, but I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah. So, but I agree. I feel like maybe the story got shortchanged because they were like, look at all this great Africa footage we have. True, but you could have given us, especially with the mines. We were almost forgot there were mines in the movie. Anyway, Jason's got to talk, and then we can score this out.
Yeah, a lot to say on this one, I think. Africa itself was a character in the movie, and I definitely get the sense, a lot of this based off the trivia I read. Like I learned that Deborah Kerr was really disappointed she didn't get cast in The African Queen. So the studio kind of gave her this role as a consolation prize. As far as their chemistry goes, I guess the two of them really did hook up. They both had an affair, and Stuart Granger in his biography said, you know, when they were on the set, they were getting busy up there. They were doing it like they do on the Discovery Channel up in that tree. And he was quoted, he's like, we never should have come down from that tree. Like, they really dug each other.
I guess I can't read chemistry, on-screen chemistry.
Well, you know, maybe they were like, maybe we need to tone it back because both of our spouses are going to be watching this movie. So, you know, maybe it was a little, you know, it was more in the real life that they were feeling it. But Africa itself, I think, was really just starting to be discovered by Hollywood, and it was kind of the place to go. A lot of the things were really exciting, and probably the reason maybe why they were like, okay, I guess we gotta throw a cave and some diamonds in here at some point, right, fellas? Let's go to Carlsbad, film that, get this part done, and then the rest of it's all in Africa. I like the character of Quatermain in this book. I liked how Stuart Granger played him as kind of aging, kind of getting tired of taking wealthy, pampered tourists out to kill animals, trying to figure out what he wants to do next in his life. And really his motivation is to just kind of get that last payday so he can set his son up, who he's never really spent any time with. It's kind of sad. It's kind of a sad story. And then Deborah Kerr's character, it's kind of tragic. She's there out of guilt because she never really loved her husband. And both of them are kind of maybe not so noble motives. They're noble on the surface, but they have some kind of selfish intent. So there are elements of the story that's really good. As they journey through Africa, the ordeal just becomes so real. It's like the facade that you put up in civilized society, the continent's just going to beat you down and the truth is going to come out. And that's exactly what happens over the course of the movie. And that's the element of the story I really liked about it.
I was all like, the colors are pretty. Jason's got...
We'll get to that in spectacle.
Jason's got analogies for life. And
that was deep stuff, Jason. That was good. Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, that means it's time to score these things. Let's double back to Gwangi of 1969. Not a ton of story, but gets carried along well. And I don't know. What do you got, Jason? 1 to 10.
It has a lot of flaws. I'll admit it. Maybe I'm being a little generous, but I had fun with it. And that's really what I wanted. I just wanted to have fun with it. And it gave me some fun. And I gave it a 7.
Match game number 1. I also gave it a 7. We are doing strong out of the box.
Alan just gets up and leaves. I quit. These mendicants.
Let's go to King Solomon's Mines, Jason. 1 to 10.
I know it isn't completely aligned with the source material. This is classic stuff at its best. And I really liked the focus of the journey, the friction between the two characters. I gave it an 8.
All right. I also scored this one a 7, so we're not far apart. Alan's guess of 6 is in no danger at this point. And speaking of Alan, you are the sniper. You have but 1 point to give in this category. Which movie did you think had a better story?
No surprise. I'm giving it to King Solomon's Mines.
Makes perfect sense. It's the classier of the two stories.
It really.
There's just maybe a bit of emotional connection.
Right. I mean, you got a tie to it, a pretty strong tie to it. That's pretty cool. All right. Well, that is the end of round 1.
Let the mayhem begin.
Well, let's go to round 2 and talk about the hero, or the ensemble of heroes in the case of Valley of Gwangi. What did you think of the heroes of Valley of Gwangi, Alan?
Yeah, you're right. It's pretty much an ensemble. I mean, I guess supposedly James Franciscus's character, Tuck Kirby, there. What a name that is, Tuck Kirby. I don't know. I felt he was a bit of a one-note cowboy hero. I liked at the beginning how they set him up as being, he was an ex-rider in the show who was basically fed up of getting, dumped on his backside for $10 a show or wherever it was. Sort of went off and became this wheeler dealer for the other shows, buying and selling stuff for Buffalo Bill and talent spotting and stuff. I thought that was really, really cool, but they never really carried it on, I think. And he became a bit one note. He sort of became, for me, just a cool looking dude on a horse, which he seemed to fall off an awful lot. He seemed to spend a lot of time falling off his horse. He sort of reacted to stuff. I mean, you mentioned the last reel and the fight, and I'm sure we'll get into that. Even there, he wasn't really thinking ahead on how he could defeat the T-Rex. He was reacting to things that were happening around him. So I didn't think he was that dynamic a hero. The female lead, who's not the actress, but the name of the character I've forgotten. I was initially put off by the dubbing because it was very obvious that she was being dubbed. The dialogue, the way it was delivered didn't quite match her facial emotions to start with, but it sort of got better. Maybe I just got used to it. She was in Like Flint. She was actually one of the female leads in Like Flint, the James Coburn movie, where I don't think they dubbed her because she has a very strong Israeli accent. I'm going way off topic here.
That's all right. I just looked it up if you need it again later. She was TJ. Her name was TJ.
Yeah, TJ. Thank you. TJ Breckenridge. Yeah, I got there. Yeah, I liked her. I actually thought she had more get up and go than the male lead. I think she was a strong character. She knew how to play both sides. I could see her being the leader of the Wild West show. I know in a lot of these things you get this idea, the female lead is meant to have this role and you can't really believe them. But here, I think she very much came across as the leader of that group of cowboys and stuff. Did seem a little bit heartless that you mentioned the supposed love triangle at the beginning with the cowboy who was on her stuff that she was doing the deal with the miniature horse. They seem to have a relationship, but when he got eaten by the dinosaur and his empty horse came hurtling by, nobody reacted to it. Nobody went, hey, where's whatever his name is? And she didn't. And I was like, hang on a minute. I thought you meant to be in love with that guy and he just got eaten by a dinosaur and you don't give a shit. So
was that Carlos or Champ? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
It was Carlos.
Was Carlos?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carlos, oh no.
Yeah. Well, that's a way to resolve the love triangle, I guess.
Yeah. I thought she was a really good, strong female lead. So for me, the standout was the little kid, though. I think he acted everybody off screen.
He did. The end when he's crying at the dinosaur died. Oh, he got me.
Yeah,
man.
I know. Yeah, I was like, oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, he was my favorite as well. Well, Jared, what do you think? What do you think of the heroes there in Valley of Gwangi? Tuck and TJ, Lopi,
Carlos,
Camp.
Lopi, that was his name. Yeah, thank you.
Carlos's actor's name was Gustavo Rojo, the Red Gustav.
Red Gustav.
That's amazing. Anyway,
for me, man.
Yeah. Hey, I'm watching you, Carlos.
Carlos Rojo.
I don't like using this phrase, but I'm going to use it. I'm going to have to agree with Alan. TJ steals the show. The female lead is I was going to say you focus on her, which is natural for a guy like me, but she's really pretty. But I feel like she carries the movie better. At the beginning, I really thought we were going to kind of follow James Franciscus, but it really feels like we follow her a little more. I don't know. He's handsome and he's Tuck and, he does a great job and all that. But when I think back on this movie, I'm going to think more of TJ. Like, I thought she was kind of the glue that held it all together. I enjoyed it, but yeah, it's funny. I have up in front of me right now some of the just quick blurb Rotten Tomatoes reviews, and this dude Luke Thompson from the New York Times, his quick blurb review on this movie is Cowboys and Dinosaurs. Too bad we root for the dinosaurs, but the Cowboys win. And I'm like, you know what? It's kind of true. Like, nothing against the leads, but they really are, like we've talked about, the hero of the film, like, which I guess is Tuck. I'm thinking of as TJ. Doesn't matter. Either way, they're really just the glue to get us to the dinosaur parts. So, there you go.
That's fair. And I was feeling kind of bad for the dinosaurs. It's like they were just minding their own business there in the
straight
valley.
Up chilling in the valley.
And then these guys go in and start shooting at them and stuff. I mean, come on. Let's switch it over to King Solomon's Mines and see what we think of Miss Curtis and Alan Quartermain and John Good, the brother. What do you think of the heroes from King Solomon's Mines there, Alan?
Well, like I said, I like Alan Quartermain. I like writing him, so I do have a bias. I like Stuart Granger's version here. Like you said, he's sort of at the end of his tether, just being this guide, and he's looking for the next thing. I like the fact that he realizes that he's on borrowed time, and his real focus is his son, who we never meet in here. Though I actually plug my second Alan Quartermain story. I actually started with him in London visiting his son. It's set after King Solomon's Mines, where they meet a certain young detective who's looking for a new apartment on 221B Baker Street.
Who could that be?
Quartermain and the young detective teach each other a few things. Anyway, end up plugging my own story. I mean, clearly, I like Quartermain. I thought Granger played him really well. And some of the other ones, he just tends to be the bit of the muscular superhero almost type thing. And I like the fact that he, as in the book, he's older. I think he's in his late 50s at this point in the books. So I think that they played that well. The little touch of, the Reed Richards grey at the side, I thought was a neat touch. The fact that he, starts off fairly grizzled. He's only doing this for the money so he can give it to his son. And then, as you said, the barriers start to come down as they go through. And then he sort of starts to adopt the people. I mean, he clearly looks after the folks that he employs. He really feels for them. I like the fact that he knows when not to fire his rifle as much as when to fire the rifle. I thought that was really, really well put through. So, yeah, really, really did like them. Like I said, I clearly misread it, but the Deborah Kerr character, I thought, one, like I said, in the source material, she's not there. Seemed a bit superfluous. I really didn't get a motivation of, I really didn't look after this guy, therefore I'm going to go rescue him. I don't know, that didn't seem quite right. I like the brother. I think he could have got more time.
Yeah, I liked him too.
A bit more character development. Yeah, and I like the two main guides as well. Yeah, it was like a good ensemble cast. No disrespect to Miss Kerr, who I love in other stuff, but I thought she was a bit the weak link in this one.
It's interesting you say that, because I don't disagree with you as far as the chemistry on the screen goes. It seemed like Deborah Kerr just never looked like she was really belonging in the film. And they shared that that scene when she cuts her hair, and then it cuts to her, after the haircut when she's laying up there. and her legs are all smooth, and she has like that perfect coif. And when they did the test screening of that, like all the women just started laughing. Like that, it's like it's so ridiculous.
I watched it with Jill, and she had exactly that reaction when that happened. She burst out into laughter and was like, "Seriously?"
Yeah, you know, at that point, she's got her legs are gonna look like two Ewoks be hugging on it.
Well, yeah, you know, she just hacks at it with those scissors, and it's all nicely curled. And yeah, what salon did she stop by behind the rocks there? Yeah.
She took the audience out of it in 1950, and they thought about reshooting it, but you know, it was already done. So it's like we just got to kind of ride this out at this point. But all good points, Alan.
Actually, I will add one thing. When I do write Alan Quartermain stories, what I have in my mind really is a amalgam of Stuart Granger's version and Sean Connery's version.
Oh, I like Sean Connery's version. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, so that's the Alan Quartermain that runs around in my head, is like an amalgam of those two actors' versions.
Yeah. I know Rotten Tomatoes gives League of Extraordinary Gentlemen like a 7. I think I'm 3 of those 7 tomatoes, man.
I'm the other 4 then.
Oh, well, I'm with you because I quite enjoy that movie. So
it's guilty pleasure, but pleasure nonetheless. Anyway, but we're talking about 1950s Alan Quartermain, Jared, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
I think you guys have exhausted it. That guy was good. I liked him.
Did he look like Christopher Lee to you?
He did look like Christopher Lee.
Yes. He went and go like knick-knack, Tabasco, you know. On his house.
Well, we can make it 3 for 3 because I was watching it with Johanna, and I think I was the one that actually said, she looks strikingly good for like a jungle beauty spot. Johanna was like, yeah, that's a little weird. So it did not go unnoticed in any household. No, nothing really else to add. When I saw this guy at first, I thought he looked a little weak, maybe, because I'm comparing him to Connery's kind of big and blustery when he plays him. He's very big. Not just physically, but he's acting big, you know. The other one I'm most familiar with is Richard Chamberlain from the Cannon films. Which,
wow, that was great.
Those are just fantastically bonkers, right? Richard Chamberlain as Harrison Ford, as Alan Quartermain type of a deal, you know? So this guy, I was like, I don't know. He's a little to me. But then when I saw how they were playing it, and like, again, he's older and more cerebral. And I think they did a great job of setup at the beginning. And Jason and I texted a little bit about this as well. When you're watching, you're like, holy goodness, did they actually kill an elephant for this movie? Because it was pretty rough to watch. And if listeners out there, they did not, but they had stock footage of an actual elephant hunt. So it is really an elephant dying on screen. And it's hard to watch. And on one hand, I texted Jason, I said, I would have rather had been some fakey. I'd rather be fakey elephant die than even just the footage, the stock footage. But the more I think about it, man, that scene right there, that just tells you Quartermain's sick of it. He's as sick of it as the audience, or at least I was as an audience member. Like I couldn't do that. And that's exactly where he is at in his headspace. I can't do that. I just can't. Yeah. And I thought that was a good take, and I'll leave there.
Yeah. Interesting little bit of trivia on that scene. Apparently, the crew did go to film a hunt in Africa. Fake. What ended up happening is the elephants started stampeding, and everybody scattered and ran. So they lost the shot. They had set it up, and it all just fell apart, and they couldn't put it back together. So that's when they went to get the stock footage. And then what you see after that stock footage was reshot back in the US using stage trained elephants. Okay. So it was an amalgamation. But yeah, when you see that stock footage, that was the first thing I thought too. And so the crew, when they saw the stock footage, and what happened was that elephant like really did try to pick up the elephant that was shot and tried to help its buddy. It broke their hearts. And spoiler alert, we might be seeing some deduction rounds in this one. Anyway, I talked a lot. I think it's time for us to score these things. Here we go. Jared, Valley of Gwangi, TJ, Tuck, Champ, douchebag 1, douchebag 2. What are you giving them?
Not super gripping, but slightly memorable. So I'm going with a 6.
I think I was a little kind. I gave it a 7. I like Tuck.
All right.
I heard y'all. Okay. Tuck was cool, man. I thought Tuck was. I guess
he's a cool dude. I just think he could have done a little more with him. That's all.
I guess I was the only one who had any love for Tuck. But that's okay. Maybe we'll agree on King Solomon's Mines. What did you give Alan Quartermain there, Jared?
Not my favorite representation, but I liked him more as it went on, and I ended up at a 7.
Well, again, I think I bumped it up a little bit. I thought, like, Alan Quartermain, that's kind of a core character, and I think he did pretty well with it. I gave him an 8. So, Alan, we gave you a little bit of a spread to work with here. So who's going to get your sniper bullet on this one?
No surprise, my extra point goes to Alan Quartermain.
This whole thing is rigged. It's rigged, Jason.
We can just record that, I think. We can let you go from here, Alan. Alan Quartermain.
Yeah, I'll go back now. Okay.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks. All right. I'll pass it over to you, Jared.
All right. It must mean it's time for round 3.
What do we do? We die.
Round 3 is the villain. How menacing or entertaining is your villain? This one's going to be interesting. Jason, you get to go first this time. Gwangi, I don't know.
Menacing. I don't know.
I mean, first of all, what do you consider the villain, or who?
I guess to me, I was considering the villain pretty much the T-Rex. But again, T-Rex was only doing T-Rex things in his valley. And these guys got the brilliant idea to start Jurassic Park, a roving Jurassic Park with him, which I don't know if that was somehow we went from little horses to, hey, let's get the big T-Rex. Ride that thing around.
I commented about that too when we were watching. I was like, wait, we went from tiny horses to giant dinosaurs. That's a big leap.
Okay. So he was entertaining in his way. So I guess I'll just leave it at, I thought the T-Rex was the villain. They kind of were making, was his name Carlos, the Mexican guy? Were they trying to make him a villain at one point?
Sometimes it felt like they were.
So I don't know. I'll stick with the dinosaur. Was it menacing? No. Was it entertaining? Sure. And I'll leave it there.
All right. Alan, who is both menacing and entertaining. What do you got, Alan?
Yeah, I was the same thing. It's like, who is the villain of this? And I guess it was Gwangi, the T-Rex. I assume Gwangi was the T-Rex. I loved, by the way he had the ability to change size depending on what the shot needed. Yeah, like you said, I mean, the poor guy's just out there eating smaller dinosaurs, minding his own business, and these bunch of insects on horses come charging in and throw ropes around him, and then he gets knocked unconscious, and they drag him away and set him up in a town full of annoying people, and then do what they do to him at the end. I just felt sorry for him, to be honest. Yeah. It's like, he's not doing anything. It's just, as you said, he's just hanging out doing dinosaur things in his dinosaur home. And these people come along and, if anybody's the villain, I guess it's the cowboys generally in terms of dragging him out there. But obviously he was meant to be the villain of the piece, but he didn't come across as that. He was just too sympathetic a character. I think the most sympathetic character in the movie.
Much like King Kong.
Much like King Kong, yeah.
Jason, let's talk King Solomon's Mines. Once again, I don't know.
I think this is like, going back to my high school literature when they're like, this is man versus fill in the blank. And this is a little bit of man versus himself, with Quartermain aging and trying to figure out what his next step in life is. It's a little bit of man versus man, because you've got the guy that is the murderer or something that kind of taken over that tribe that's going to betray them. You've got the feud between the kings. Then you've got a whole lot of man versus nature. And it's all kind of just stuck in this film. You don't really have a Darth Vader type character or a Lord Voldemort that you can point to. It's just an amalgam of personal struggle against nature, other crooked criminal beings, and themselves. It's a little bit difficult, when you look at it in that aspect, but to me, it works. It works for the story. It does give a lot of pathos for our leading characters to slog their way through, and they do slog through it, man. It's like, we've got spiders, we got snakes, we got crocodiles. It's the whole shebang. Leopards and lions and just everything that the jungle can throw at them. And by the end of it, I mean, they're all out there. Alan Quartermain's got like his pants are ripped up to his crotch. I mean, he's got no shirt on, basically. I mean, he's looking rough. They look like they've been put through it. So, yeah, that's the best I can say is you just got an amalgamation of man versus man versus himself, and man versus nature as your villain.
Alan, you want to follow that up in any way, or
that was very profound. Yeah, you said earlier that Africa is the star of the show. I think Africa is also the villain in the fact that you've got not just all those wonderful pieces of stock footage things that kill you that they kept pointing to, but you said like the spiders and the fire ants and the cats and everything else, and everywhere they went, the crocodiles and the hippos and the rhinos, and there was all that. But also, I think just the geography too. You had from the plains where they started off into the jungle, the desert, and then climbing over the mountains, and the rivers and stuff. The biggest thing they had to overcome was the continent itself and the journey. So, if it was a villain, I think my villain was Africa, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was trying to kill him.
Yeah.
If I learned nothing else from this round, it's that Jason's going to score that higher than I did. Speaking of which, let's go back and score them, Jason. Let's go to Gwangi. And, both these films didn't have a lot of, like you said, there was no Hans Gruber in there. So, I don't know. What'd you do at Gwangi? 1 to 10?
I gave it a 6. I thought the dinosaur was fine.
I still have a hard time picking the villain. Like, I'm too sympathetic with the dinosaur. I think I have it at a 5. I'm like, whatever, it's 5. So we're not far apart.
Yeah, I'm not going to hate you on that 5.
This is where Jason's score is going to be different from mine. I can tell you that. King Solomon's Mines. Jason spoke for about 45 minutes on the ability of King Solomon's Mines. What'd you land on?
Well, I was really just trying to set up a good defense, like any good defense.
I can tell. I've been doing the show. This is our 76th episode. I knew what you were doing.
For the 7, I'm about to lay down.
7.
I did. I thought as far as an adversary for our heroes on this journey, man, Africa did a pretty doggone good job. It threw everything at them but the kitchen sink. I thought Quartermain's monkey was going to come out and try and knife him at some point. And I'm like, I got shanked by a monkey, man. This whole place is trying to kill me.
The longer Jason explains, like, the symbolism behind things, he sets it up. I gave it a 5. All right. It's 5 for me. I did like that dude, though. That dude, he was like, is he Dutch or whatever? And he was going under the fake name. He kind of
with the killer guy who had.
I liked him. I kind of wish he was more of the villain in the movie because I thought he was pretty cool. But in the end, I'm going to give it a 5 because when I think back on it, I'm just going to think about, they kind of went up against, the hardest parts of traveling across Africa. So, anyways, it's bullet time. Alan, which movie did you like the villainy better in?
I'm actually going to give it to Gwangi because as much as the Africa thing was cool and very symbolic and all that sort of stuff, with Gwangi, there was actually a central character who was meant to be the villain, the bad guy of the piece, even if he actually turned out to be the most sympathetic character in the movie. But if you're going to say who was the villain, I think that was easier to figure out in Gwangi. So that gets my point.
Fair enough. And that's the end of round 3.
It's time to die.
Means we're getting into the good stuff. We're getting into the spectacle. So how engaging is the film overall? And we're talking cinematography, we're talking stunts and effects and, sound mixing and soundtrack. And actually, there wasn't even a soundtrack to King Solomon's Mines. So this will be an interesting one. And Jared, we're going to let you talk first this time. What would you think of the overall spectacle from Valley of Gwangi?
Valley of Gwangi begins and ends with Ray Harryhausen. That is where the spectacle. Well, that's a little bit of a lie. I liked the locations. I liked the Mexican town. I liked the bullfighting ring. I liked the valley itself. Those were all fine. But when we're talking spectacle in Gwangi, we're talking about Ray Harryhausen and his incredible stop motion that I certainly encourage people to just start going through the Ray Harryhausen library of films. I watched a great documentary on him on Netflix many years ago. I think he studied at the feet of the King Kong guy. I think he was his assistant. and ended up, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but Alan's nodding his head. It's been a long time since I saw that documentary. It was incredible. So I'm just going to focus on that really. Within that, what really stood out to me is in 1969 stop motion effects. There was one or two times in the movie where I'm watching the effect going, I'm not sure how he did that. And that is pretty cool. And I'll just stop there. I defer my time to Alan.
All right, Alan, go ahead. What are your thoughts on Valley of Gwangi?
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually first knew of this movie from a book I had on the posters of Ray Harryhausen's movies. It was like a big art book with all the posters for these movies and little essays
awesome.
about. Sold it like last year. And each of them had little essays about the background and stuff. And I'd not seen this movie. This was the first time I watched it, but I was familiar with it from that. So it was like, oh, great, a Harryhausen movie. Really going to, enjoy it. And I did. I loved the stop motion dino stuff. That was the spectacle. The rest of the movie, spectacle-wise, was a bit blah. I mean, it was a bit one note. It was like, oh, let's get back to the dino stuff. Color-wise, it was that Southwestern muted palette, but they didn't really do anything to like pump it up. I don't think the score was particularly memorable. It just seemed a little flat and muted, except for when the dinos were on. I'm like, let's get back to the dinos.
Right.
So, if I remember it for anything, it's going to be that, sure.
Yeah. I will say the one thing that neither of you brought up that I kind of liked was the actual show performance that they did with TJ and her jumping horse. And they had like the Indians chasing the cowboys and people falling off the wagon.
Yeah, the Wild West show was fun, yeah.
I'd have paid money to see that.
I did find out a bit of trivia about the horse jump. Did you find out the trivia about the horse jump?
Other than it was stop motion.
Well, no, it wasn't. They were going to use stop motion.
Oh, I thought it was. I was like, oh,
they were going to use stop motion. And in the end, they actually found a horse and a toy figure from a toy shop and just basically threw it off the thing. So it was actually a shop bought toy. It wasn't a stop motion figure.
They fooled me.
They fooled me too. Wow. I'm just a sucker. Well, all right. Let's switch over. Let's move to Africa and talk about King Solomon's Mines. Jared, what did you think there?
It's going to get a good score because I texted you about it when I watched it the first time. And I mentioned it earlier in this podcast. It's so big and so colorful. I just want to reiterate to anybody who maybe listens to the show and says, hey, I watch all the movies from Action Film Face Off. We appreciate that, first of all. Second of all, if you watch this and go, oh, that's not impressive, you've got to think in 1950. You've got to think every show on TV is black and white. Almost every movie you're going to see is black and white. And then you have this big scale color movie showing Africa and real Africans and like the real deal. And no one has seen stuff like this before. Travel wasn't as prevalent. To me, that is like Harryhausen is the biggest piece of spectacle to Gwangi. Just Africa, the vivid Technicolor, the time they took to show you the beauty, the danger, the everything of this continent. That's the spectacle in King Solomon's.
Yeah, it's really interesting too because it was a rough shoot from what I understand, and they originally wanted to cast Errol Flynn as the lead, and he was like, "Nah, man, I don't sleep out at night." So that's how Stuart Granger got the part. So it's interesting. Like it was rough, and you can see that on the screen, or at least I could. That's how I interpret it. But
he prefers the Flynn doors, not the flap doors.
That's right. He was a green screen kind of guy before the green screen was around. You know what I'm saying?
The Roger Moore of his era.
That's right. Oh, Alan, save us. What are your thoughts?
Jared pretty much hit it. I mean, this movie, King Solomon's Mine, won the Oscar for cinematography, I think, that year. You can see why.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful... I know I joked about, it's a lot of people walking from one side of the screen to the other. But the scenery that they're walking through, the fact that most of it, the African stuff, was shot in Africa, other than the cave scene. And we mentioned earlier that the Tutsi tribe is the first time anybody's ever seen them being photographed. Just some of the landscape was just amazing. I mean, where was it? It was Uganda, Kenya, and the Belgian Congo. You said about Stuart Granger falling out with the director. From something I read, I think it was mainly about the fact that they were spending so much time in Africa, doing so much location shots, rather than getting on with the story, that upset Stuart Granger, because the first director just immersed himself in the African location, and that just comes across. I think there's a genuine love for Africa and the African continent that comes across on the screen.
Okay, I think it's time to score these suckers. So, Jared, we're going to go back to the Valley of Gwangi. Pterodactyls, Stegosaurus, T-Rex. What are you giving the spectacle for the score?
Well, I am a Harryhausen homer, as I revealed through all this, so there's going to be a good points add up there, and I'm going to give it an 8. I want our listeners at home to know that if you love Ray Harryhausen and stop motion, you might just give it an 8 too. If that's not your thing, then this movie's probably about a 2 for you. Hey, it all depends on your love for stop motion. 8 for Jared.
I also enjoyed the stop motion, not to a tune of an 8, but to a tune of a 7. What about spectacle for King Solomon's Mines?
It didn't have any stop motion, but what it did have was gorgeous filming, just the vividest of all Technicolors. I'm also giving it an 8.
Wow, I guess you were in a good mood at this point now, or I was in a little bit of a worse mood because I gave that one a 7 as well. 2 very different types of spectacle.
Yes.
For me.
Yes.
But both very enjoyable and well above average. So, again, gave you a good spread here to work with, Alan. Who's getting the bullet?
Well, you got to think stop motion elephant versus real elephants. I'm going with the real elephants. So,
all right.
I guess that means King Solomon's Mines, even though Gwangi also had real elephants, painstakingly recreated
into a stop motion elephant
with the strangest noise an elephant has ever made on screen. They had real elephants. They know what a real elephant sounds like, and they'd use this weird.
Hey, I'm an elephant over here.
Yeah.
Stop biting me, man. Stop biting me. I'm an elephant. I'm working for peanuts, man. Literally peanuts. Anyway, I'm going to hand it back to you, Jared.
Good idea. Let's get into round 5.
Put the knife away and shut your mouth.
Which is best action scene, where I give these things to my brother and he breaks them down. These are pretty big spectacle movies, but I had to make a note that there wasn't a ton of action scenes. I don't think Jason's going to have a lot to go through, but sometimes he just goes wild and I don't know. Let's look at Gwangi, Valley of Gwangi, 1969. How did you break down the action scenes? And then we'll all go ahead and pick the cool thing that happened at the end at the church, and then we'll just score. Anyway, let's not get out of ourselves. What do you got, Jason?
Let the process play out, Jared. Hold on. Let me get that.
There we go. We love it.
All right. Actually, Jared, Valley of Gwangi, I had several because I approached it thus. Anytime there was some Harryhausen effects there with the claymation stop motion, it got a
so it's more of a catalog of Harryhausen moments. I got you.
It is. And these are the ones as I remember them. The first was the pterodactyl that flew in and took Lopi. And I called that one, I'm hungry and feel like picking up a little Mexican.
All right, you can stop, man. You won.
Okay, I'm done. All right.
All right. Then the second one was the T-Rex chase when they first encounter the T-Rex. Someone needs to tighten up on their weapons discipline because really that dude that shot his rifle that did F-all to that dinosaur except take it off started this whole thing in motion. Like they could have just been like,
right,
that's a freaking dinosaur and we're going to ride right back out. And that would
he was like Leroy Jenkins. They were like, let's cook up a plan. He was like, I got it. Blam.
Leroy Jenkins. The third one was the T-Rex versus the Stegosaurus. I think it was a Stegosaurus. I don't know my dinosaurs, but the 2 big dinosaurs that fought. And I called that one chunks of clay flying everywhere.
That's right. That's right.
Which leads to T-Rex Chase 2. Well, it's all kind of part of it, really. I call that one, that's one way to get rid of the rival love interest. Just rip them off the horse. There you
go.
Number 5 was the T-Rex escaping from the cage. And I called that one, well, there's 2 you can pick. One is we ran into a little trouble. Get it? And then the other one was Professor just got barred from the academic community.
Either one's fine.
All right. They're both equally bad. And then finally, number 6, which I suspect we might all be leaning towards, is the T-Rex at church, or I call Let Us Pray.
With the E,
with the E, pray with the EY. There we go. I've used that one before, but it works.
It works here.
There's the
It really does. Let's all pick our favorites. It might be academic at this point. I just thought the church scene was cool and fun. I did like the stuff at the bullfighting ring, which he got disbarred or whatever you did. But I'll ultimately pick the church scene. What about you, Jason?
I'm going to go with the church scene as well. I thought it was really good. And it seemed like they were doing better with the interacting with the claymation. Maybe I was just getting used to it. Because at first I was like, man, he's like swinging at this pterodactyl and not really hitting it at all. And
not even anywhere near it at some points. Yeah.
Yeah. But in this one, it seemed like it looked a little more realistic.
Alan, what's your favorite action scene from Gwangi, Valley of?
Actually, none of those. I'm going to go for what happened just before the big dinosaur fight, which is the cowboys roping the T-Rex.
You like the roping action? All right.
Yeah, I kind of consider that one in T-Rex Chase 2.
Again, that's the iconic image from this movie: is the cowboys roping.
Cowboys roping it.
Roping a T-Rex. So yeah,
that was a close second for me.
All right, Jason, break them down for King Solomon's Mines.
I approached this one with the legs of the journey. So number one was like the long march across Africa, where it's like 2 weeks later. This is more an observation. Like, I didn't see any toilet paper in any of those crates. I just,
there's lots of big leaves.
And then the second one is when they get to the camp where the guy that was running from the law, and they end up having to hide up in the trees. And I called that one, "If the trees are rocking, don't come a knocking."
Right.
Right. And the third one was at the mines, and I called that one, "Oh no, your husband's dead." The fourth one was finally the battle with the two kings, and I called that one, "I think I made my point."
Oh, because of the
spear. You speared the guy.
So, Alan, which of these action scenes was your favorite?
Again, I'm not going to pick something that Jason didn't mention, but it was actually part of your first one. It was the stampede thing where they were all actually hunkered down behind the wall.
Oh, that was a good one. Yeah.
And the animals were like coming over and they're having to like shoot off to get the animals away from them. But I know it was a mix of stock footage and stuff and some studio stuff because some of those zebras definitely looked like horses with makeup. But I thought it was a very tense scene. Maybe it went a little too long, but I thought it was very tense. But I also liked the fact that it had consequences in terms of the destroyed, not just a couple of guys who got killed when they tried to run and got caught in the stampede, but also the destruction of the equipment and the supplies that they took with them. For me, that was the most tense moment, I think, of the movie, was them getting caught in that stampede. So that stampede gets my vote for the best action sequence.
I liked the trees are rocking. I really just got invested with that escape from the, when they kind of discovered, hey, we're kind of completely surrounded by people who've been poisoned against us, and we have got to get out of here. So I just got really invested at that point. So that's trees are rocking is going to be for me. What about you, Jason?
Same. I thought that was the most tense moment. He's drinking their whiskey and whatever. And he's getting drunker, and you can tell the natives are getting restless out there. And it's like, ooh, how are we going to get out of this one? How them Duke boys going to get out of this one? and it was a close one.
All right, well, let's score these movies on Best Action Scene. Jason, you and I both chose the church at the end, 1 to 10.
7 for me on that one. It was entertaining to me. And Lopi, man, he seals the deal at the end with those tears streaming down his little dirt-stained face. That was good.
Match game number 2. We finally matched for the second time. This one's going to be a low match game. We're always off by 1 point. Every time off by 1 point.
Yeah.
And Best Action Scene, we both like the Escape from the Village, King Solomon's Mines, 1 to 10, Jason.
I gave it a 6, and here's why. When we say spectacle, that can cover a lot of stuff, man. Like we said, the cinematography, that fits in a spectacle. When I say action, I want to see action. I want to see Sean Connery type Alan Quartermain action.
Right.
I want to see Richard Chamberlain type cannon film Alan Quartermain action. And I didn't get a lot of action. Probably the most action-packed moment, what Alan mentioned, it was probably that stampede.
Match game number 2. I also have it at a 6. Alan, which movie did more for you in terms of best action scene?
You know what? I think I'm going to go with Gwangi, and maybe because it's just this iconic vision that me growing up of cowboys and dinosaurs, but the cowboys roping the T-Rex. So
Even just saying that sounds cool. With the dinosaurs roping the T-Rex.
The cowboys roping a T-Rex. I mean, you can't go.
All right, that is the end of round 5.
Hadouken!
All right, here it is. Round 6, airing of grievances. Time to reduce for the ridiculous. It's time to minus it. Jared, are you going to take anything away from Valley of Gwangi? And if so, why?
No, everything's in the scoring. You know, if I was a guy who didn't like claymation, there'd be a lot of things to take off, but I love it. So, no, I'm cool. I'm cool with Gwangi.
I, too, am cool with Gwangi. I think I've factored it all out in the score. Now we're going to talk about King Solomon's Mines. And I made a little hint earlier, but I'll check in with you, Jared. Are you going to take any points away from King Solomon's Mines? And if so, why?
I'm not. I suspect you might be for the hard-to-watch elephant scene. I'm giving it a pass because, as I said before, it helps tremendously. It helps understand where Alan Quartermain is at in his life at that point. I will let it go. I don't like it, but I'll let it go.
Yeah, I'm not letting it go. I'm taking a point off, man. You cannot open this thing. Really, you know.
They were like, if you can get past this, you're going to enjoy the movie.
Africa is not for me. I knew that within the first 30 seconds of this film. And then, to see that elephant try to pick him up, get him to stand back up. I was looking like Glopey at the end in the Valley of Gwangi.
It was rough.
Man.
It was rough.
Tears just streaming down my face. So, yeah, I'm going to take a point off for that.
All right. That's the end of our official rounds. Now, don't worry if you haven't been keeping up with the math at home, folks. We do that for you here at Action Film Face Off. Real quick, looking at match game. Man, we only matched 3 times. Man, it's one of our all-time lows.
I know. We were close, though, on several.
Never more than a point away on any. Well, no, we had 2 points on the villainy from King Solomon's Mines because Jason wrote a soliloquy about the villainy, and I was like, yeah, it was no Hans Gruber. Anyways,
I had the defense from A Time to Kill on there, and it didn't do any good.
All right, so that leads us to sniper bullets. Alan ended up giving 3 of his bullets to Alan Quartermain, King Solomon's Mines, and 2 of the bullets to Valley of Gwangi. And looking at the judges' scorecards, the winner of this episode of Action Film Face Off with a score of 71 to 69. It was a tight one. King Solomon's Mines.
Well, congratulations to King Solomon's Mines. Now, let's head over to the randomizer and find out what the years are going to be for the next episode. My brother Jared will be pulling a film from...
Choose your destiny.
1979. And I will bring a film from...
Choose your destiny.
2009. What will those films be? Well, I got one guarantee for you. Since it's filmed in 2000, Jared won't have seen mine. So it'll be new to him. But we'll tease them on social media for those of you who want to watch before listening. And we're thinking about you, Dave. This is why we do it for you. Or you can tune in next episode and just find out. Till then, I'm Jason Weasel Skull Albrecht, and you can find me on social media at Jason Albrecht on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads.
And you can find me, Jared Albrecht, the Yard Sale Artist, a.k.a. Death Probe, at Yard Sale Artist on X, Facebook, and Instagram. Alan, where can folks find you?
You can find me on most social media platforms at Alan J. Porter or my website, alanjporter.com. And if you're interested in keeping up with some of the writing stuff that I mentioned, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter at alanjporter.substack.com.
And putting you on the spot one more time, Alan, we've talked a fair amount about Alan Quartermain tonight. You've written 2 stories. So, Alan, where can people find these books that you have written, published work on Alan Quartermain?
Well, Jared, thank you for asking. I have 2 Alan Quartermain stories in the Continuing Adventures of Alan Quartermain anthology series. You can just go to my website, alanjporter.com, and if you click the bookshop entry on the menu, it will take you to the bookshop page, which then has a link to our bookshop.org page where you can order the relevant books and get them shipped to you.
Sounds good. You can get other books while you're there too, by the way. You don't have to buy just the Encore main ones, but
no, yeah, you're right. We have links to quite a few books I've written over time, and actually also links to books that I've been reading.
Nice. Okay, folks, be sure to check out all the shows under the Longbox Crusade umbrella by subscribing to Longbox Crusade on all your finer podcatchers or over on YouTube, or you can check it out directly at www.longboxcrusade.com. And if you'd like to send us a question or comment, you can do that by hitting us up on social media. We are at Longbox Crusade on X, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube. And we also, if you want to be very direct to us, we have the @AFFO podcast handle on X, and basically you'll be chatting directly with me there as well. Finally, you can leave us a voicemail at 707-532-5269. That's 707-532-LBOX.
Pick up the phone.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening. Until next episode, keep your head down
and your knuckles up.
The intro and outro theme to this show and all of our Action Film Face-Off shows are done by musical genius Joe November. Check out his SoundCloud at JOSEFLIN99. You will not regret it.
I did actually write once a Cowboys versus Dinosaurs story, but it did not get published. It's one of the few that I have. I really need to dust it off sometime and submit it somewhere else. But
concur. Yeah. I would read it. This episode, I was assigned the year of 1969, and I have selected The Valley of Gwangi. Damn it. It's a good outtake, though, I gotta admit.
And then he starts shooting at me.
You're supposed to let me finish it off.
And Jared, I want you to know that you are not a weirdo.
Jared, you are a weirdo.